Brian Roisentul here. I'm the host of the Fit Growth Machine podcast, and today we have an awesome episode. We are going to talk about how to leverage the voice of customers to grow an e-commerce brand. But before introducing today's guest, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help e-commerce brands that want to scale their business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. BSR Digital knows that most e-commerce brands want to scale their sales, but they lack a solid plan and professional teams to succeed. That's why BSR Digital offers strategic plans, implementations, optimizations, and account audits to help more than 1,000 e-commerce brands like yours grow their businesses and surpass their competitors. To learn more, you can visit them at bsrdigital.com, or you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Sorry, bsrdigital.com. So today we have an awesome guest. I told you, and it's true, I keep my word. Her name is Tawny de Peña, and she's a conversion copywriter and creative strategist, and will be a speaker. Listen to this. She will be a speaker in the next Ad World conference. Hey, Tawny, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, I know you have a very interesting story and a very fun one. So why don't we just start there? I mean, what can you say about you, about your life, your background, anything even if it's a fun story?
I would say that I actually didn't get my start in advertising and marketing. I got my start in journalism. So I started producing TV news, and then, sorry, I'm getting a call. Let me close it.
No worries.
All right. So I got my start, like I said, I got my start in journalism, and I produced for both ABC and NBC affiliates. I felt kind of like, I don't know, like I loved what I do, but I felt like I was missing something. And so I eventually quit my job and found my way into advertising and marketing. Thankfully, like I had found this creative director who decided to take a chance on me. And I was applying for a social media role. And he said, you'd be bored out of your mind as a social media manager. You're a copywriter. I had no idea what a copywriter was at that time. And so when I took the job, obviously, but I read every book I could about copywriting before my first day. And then from there, the rest was history. I started out in agency, and then I moved into in-house. And I quickly fell in love with conversion copywriting. And I think that the difference between like regular brand copywriting and conversion copywriting is I love the science. I love the numbers that goes together with it, because it's not just about writing. It's about understanding your customers and figuring out what it takes, like what gets them to tick, what pisses them off, like what are the biggest blocks for them? What are the biggest objections, the biggest doubts, so that I can increase my numbers. And there's nothing better than the feeling of having a KPI. Like I want to have an 18% open rate. And then you're like, oh, look what I did. I made it 25% open rate, So I think that's why I love conversion copywriting in a different way than I love brand copywriting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we are really alike, because I personally have a background in computer science. And when I started my first agency was by coincidence. I didn't mean to start an agency. I had a startup back then. And then we had like a lot of inbound leads saying, hey, I want you to do the social media management. This was probably 2011, right? So it was a whole different world than today's. And it's like, hey, do you want to do the organic content, all this stuff? And initially we started doing that with a partner, right? I was at the startup back then. And then after the startup, I went full-time there. And I remember meeting with some business owners and saying, yeah, I mean, you're doing great. You got 10 likes, 10 shares, and 10 comments. Isn't that awesome? And they said, yeah, but how can I get customers? How can I get leads? And I said, yeah, I mean, I come from this, hard and let's say squared background of computer science, not creative. And it was like, okay. So yeah, I love the analytics and the science, as you said, the numbers. How can we provide them with value, business value? And that's why I shifted into conversions early on. So it's super similar. Like
Same.
I
Same.
couldn't stand delivering only the branding side of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to do because you get to be really creative, but then there's no way to measure your work.
Yeah.
So how do I know whether or not my shit is actually going to stick, you know?
Yeah.
Or am I just throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks? And which feels like, yeah, you can do it. You can make. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with brand copywriting, but I'm saying with conversion copywriting, you have a solid baseline. You know where you're starting, and you know where you're going to go.
Yeah, no, for sure. So today we're going to have like a sort of a sneak peek of what you're going to talk about in the Ad World conference. By the way, congrats for being a speaker. It's a huge thing.
Thank you, thank you. I'm
So,
very excited about it.
yeah,
My mom has no idea what it means, but I do.
that's the thing about these, let's say, new jobs for the not that young people to avoid hurting their feelings, right? So
Yeah.
it's like they don't get what we do. They don't get. They
Yeah.
just don't get it. And okay, is it a conference? And where is it? Online. And I mean, is there a stage? Or I mean, yeah, online.
Yeah, for sure.
And what do you do? Well, probably explaining what you do or what I do is like rocket science for many people. So it's like it's not that complicated, but it's not like medicine or we're not lawyers.
Teaching or a lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah, we are letting everyone down. We know that. Sorry, mom. No, but yeah. So I would love to get that sneak peek because I know that. I mean, I'm an advertiser, of course, obviously, and so you are as well. And it's like I know that e-commerce, I mean, every brand, but mainly e-commerce brands, because again, they love and they need conversions, they need traffic to get the purchases or the leads or whatever they are looking for, but it's not only brand awareness. So they need to have, certain things done in a certain way to actually get the results that they want. And they are going through many challenges right now. I know it firsthand, you know it firsthand, right? And they are actually facing a lot of challenges nowadays, right? So what are some of the challenges that you see that most brands are facing right now?
Well, especially after iOS 14 launched and we started moving toward a more privacy first world, that means that we don't have the secret algorithms that tell us exactly who our audience is, who they are and what they like and what they don't like. And so that means that we have to do a lot more heavy lifting on our end. And what we saw when iOS 14 was released was that our campaigns, the shit that used to work, it just doesn't work anymore. And so what you saw was a lot of advertisers not hitting their KPIs, whether you were an agency or a brand itself. They tried to exhaust all the things that they knew that did work. And guess what? They wasted a shit ton of money. And I think that the biggest outcome or the biggest roadblock that a lot of e-commerce brands and just brands in general are facing right now is that people think that ads in general are annoying. 91% of consumers call ads intrusive. 74% of consumers avoid ads altogether. 25% of internet users use ad blockers. And the biggest kicker is that the most popular CTA button of all time with every single consumer is skip ad. It's the highest performing CTA button. And that should tell us something, that people don't like what we do. So what can we do to change it?
Yeah, I think that besides the percentages, I could say as an user as well that ads are annoying, right? The thing is that what's shocking is that we all as advertisers and brands seem to not care about that. It's like we look the other way. It's like, oh, we know they are annoying, but yeah, we will do it anyway. The same way we used to do them, and who cares? Screw them or whatever, right? And it's not working. It won't be beneficial to them, to the brands, right? So basically, I like the comment we had in the previous call, in which he said something like, I don't remember the exact words, but that we probably hurt our industry with bad habits and marketing for too long, And now it's probably time to do things right because we are forced into a corner, right?
Yes, agree. 100%. Like we have to change the way that we're delivering our ads. And it's very much like what you said. We need to stop looking the other way and actually talk to our customers, listen to them. And the biggest reason why I brought up the fact that I started my career in journalism is because that's what makes me such a great conversion copywriter, is because I'm curious. I'm willing to ask the questions to my customers, and because they're the ones with all the answers. You're not going to find the answers in a fucking Facebook algorithm. You have to do the work, do the legwork. There is no shortcut. Everybody, even if you just look at the Ad World conference and look at the list of all the titles that everybody's looking for, they're all shortcuts. I'm here to tell you that there's no shortcut. The only shortcut is doing the foundational work the right way. And by the foundational work, I'm talking about going out there, talking to your customers, identifying the key voice of customer data you need, using that and integrating it within your buyers personas, and then creating content based off of what you learned.
There are so many important things in what you said. Whenever we work with many brands, they think they know what their customers want. They had never asked or a long time ago, right? And they didn't analyze that even if they did, right? But most they don't. And they assume a lot of things that lead to the wrong, of course, assumptions and the wrong efforts and the wrong outcomes. So what do you suggest that people do when they identify that? It's like, hey, I mean, everyone listening is like, hey, this is me. I mean, I don't know what they want. I don't know how they want it or why they want my products. I mean, obviously, I mean, if they want some, I don't know, whatever, AirPods, they want to listen to music. Yeah, right. Probably not. Maybe what we assume they want is not always what they want, and there are if different avatars or buyer personas. So what's the process that you use, whatever you can tell the audience, right? But what's the process that you use to actually go and find out what they want and give it to them?
I use a method that I call the ROI method, and it's super simple. And just so everyone knows, yes, there is a return on investment by using it. It starts with research. Then you go to the organization phase, and then you go to the implementation phase. Like I said, it's super simple. So when you start with the research phase, that's when you're actually going to go out and physically or virtually talk to your customers. I like to do this through one of two ways. Interviews or focus groups. So what you want to do is you want to question your customers. When you end up getting them into focus groups, I like to set them up into maybe like 3 different focus groups. I call them lovers, crushes, and heartbreakers. Lovers are people who are your diehard fans, and they buy from your brand consistently. Crushes are people who know about your brand, but they haven't purchased from you yet. Heartbreakers are people who aren't considering purchasing from your brand at all. But what I find interesting is that the lovers, they tell you so many great things about the specific features and benefits that they get from purchasing your product or service. And yes, there are key benefits and features that you already know about as a business. But the thing is that when you're not, our customers, they're actually living with the brand. They're living with the product or service every single day. So they're going to discover new ways to use your product or service that you might not have known about. And that's why talking to lovers really matters. On the other hand, crushes and heartbreakers, what they do is they help to uncover all of the doubts that your customers have about your product or service. They uncover all of the objectives you have. I'm sorry, not objectives, all the objections that they have toward buying your product or service. They uncover all the anxieties that they have with your messaging, so that you can really remove those blocks and eliminate that doubt, and then cure the anxieties within your copy and within your messaging, so that your customers feel comfortable. Do you want to move on to the next phase?
Yeah.
Or do you want to talk a little bit more about the research phase?
What do we want? I mean, what I would like to add about that is that, I mean, of course, I'm not asking you to tell the audience the whole thing, but I'm just saying that, I mean, listening to what you're saying is pretty interesting, and I think it can truly uncover many, yeah, many golden nuggets, right? And you need to ask the right questions. I totally, well, you in the conversation and the audience, that I have a background in computer science, and what they train us for is to actually ask questions the right way to get the requirements right, the scope of a project, and blah, 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 right? So we need to know how to ask, and I know how important it is to ask the right questions. If they ask them, do they like our products? Oh, where did you hear about us, or how did you hear about us, and is that it? No, I mean, you need to ask the right questions, and you need to get in front of the right audience. What about giving them something in return? Are you okay with that?
Well, I think it's really great to give the customers an incentive, whether you're giving them a free product, a discount, or a gift card to somewhere, because that will entice them to engage. One thing that I did want to address is a lot of marketers will be like, focus groups and interviews, that's going to be time consuming. Why can't I just send out a survey? Yeah, you can definitely send out a survey, and you'll get amazing qualitative and quantitative results from those surveys. But the difference between surveys versus interviews and focus groups is that in the interview and the focus group, you talked about, like Brian, you talked about asking the right questions. But when you're having these people directly in front of you, now you can question their responses. You can bounce ideas directly off of them. And then you can also guide the conversation while validating and disproving assumptions. And then all of this will help to uncover new messaging for your entire brand, for your entire offer. Because at the end of the day, it's not about getting a direct response is not about getting your process. It's not about being clever, creative, or cool. It's about getting your prospects to say yes to the offer. And you're never going to figure out what that stuff is unless you actually talk to them and figure out what they want, what they like, and what they don't like.
Agree 100%. Yeah.
And then the next thing is like I said, you start going into the organization phase. And once you have all of your voice of customer data, what I like to do is I process all of that information into one document. And then, okay, I start to notice recurring themes. I start to identify the key features and benefits that they like the most. Sometimes they align with what we're already touting as a brand. And sometimes there are new ones that I've just discovered. And then I also like to identify the objections and the doubts. Once I have the recurring themes, I'll start to see, okay, wait, there's this recurring theme is the thing that they talk about most. Now I know that this is the theme that I need to mention in every single one of my advertising and every single one of my creatives. And so what you'll begin to uncover, and once you start to place everything into a bucket based on their recurring themes and the features and benefits, and then the objections and doubts, you'll start to see, okay, there are themes here that I can use within my advertising and in my marketing campaigns. And I can see that there are some that are more important than the others. And it becomes so easy from there, because the themes that have the most voice of customer data is going to be the stuff that's the most important. The stuff with the least amount of customer data, voice of customer data, is important for you to know, but maybe not necessarily important enough to include in an advertisement. Maybe it's important to include on a fact page or something like that.
So it has a lot of applications, right? Once you categorize what they want, you identify the common, the patterns, the common themes, you need to use that, right? It's not to save in a drive folder and forget about it forever. You can use that in many places, as you said. So you mentioned like the copy, or it could be for the creatives, it could be for, I don't know, an email sequence, it could be for website, it could be for many things, right?
Yeah, for sure. You can literally apply this to any single piece of content that you need to create for your marketing funnels. And then once you're done with the organization phase, before you start writing, we're going to move into the implementation phase, the last phase of the ROI method. And in before you start writing, what you really need to do is identify the stage of awareness that the audience you're trying to reach right now, figure out where they are. There are 5 stages of awareness, one being unaware. The prospect isn't aware of the problem they need to solve. The number 2, problem aware. The prospect has a specific problem and they're looking for a solution. Number 3 is solution aware. The prospect knows the solution they're looking for, and now they're starting to browse different solutions. The 4th one is product aware. The prospect knows your product exists, but they still aren't convinced to convert just yet. And then the 5th stage is most aware, where the prospect knows your product and what it does, but they haven't purchased yet. So your job as a marketer is to move them through every single stage of the process until they reach most aware. So if somebody is in the problem aware stage, your job is to move them from problem aware to solution aware, and then product aware, and then most aware. That's where, and then once we're there in most aware, that's when urgency and direct response really comes into play, so that you can kind of tip them over the edge into converting. And so the way that you identify this is by really having an understanding of your marketing funnels. You're not just creating funnels just for the heck of it. You have to understand the starting point. Okay, so if I'm doing an email funnel, where did these people start? Do they even know anything about this brand? If they started with an opt-in, what is that opt-in? If you can understand where they are based off of that opt-in, okay, now I know because of this opt-in, they're in problem aware. So now I need to move them throughout this for the next email.
Yeah, I mean, this gives me a lot of clarity, because when I started working with many clients, some of them, I mean, talking about the ad campaigns they run, right? Even if it's Facebook, Google, regardless of the platform, they have some of them, not all of them, some kind of structure similar to what you said. Some has, I don't know, 3 stages, cold, warm, and hot, top, middle, or bottom of the funnel, whatever you want to call it. But the funny thing is that, or not so funny actually, is that they use the same message across the board. Does it ring the bell? I mean, they use the same message and they say, "Oh, this is not working." No wonder why it's not working. It's because we are telling, we are not actually following these steps. We are not actually making them aware of the problem they have. We are just trying to pitch them with our solution, and probably it's like, "Hey, I don't have any needs."
Well, let's be honest. We as marketers, because of how easy social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and like every single one of them, Snapchat, you can say that they made it so easy for us to target people that we stopped making buyers personas. Like we started guessing. We're not taking the time anymore because it was easier for us to figure out, okay, the algorithm can just figure out what stage they're in, and then we'll make our marketing campaigns based on whatever the computer tells us. That's not going to work anymore.
Yeah. For those who don't know, what's a buyer persona?
A buyer's persona is basically, it's like a profile that tells you exactly who the different segments are of your target market. So it's very different than just identifying your target audience, because your buyer's persona, it divides it in your target market into different segments, and it's a research-based profile that hits each of those segments. So you understand, okay, I have, like, let's say you're a brand who markets to, you can market to moms. So then you're gonna approach a mom completely differently than you would a single woman who's maybe 10 years younger. They're still both part of your target market, but you're not going to approach those people the same exact way. A mother wants her problem solved in a way that will maybe help her children too. And a single woman would probably want her problem solved in a way, in a completely different way, if that makes sense.
Do you have an example on how this has helped some brands? I mean, that you can not show, like, that you can tell the audience about some specific case study. I don't know. I remember you told me one about.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was working on a water bottle brand. It's actually the water bottle that I drink from every single day. It's called Dylan. and they weren't using buyers personas. And finally, when we kept saying, hey, we need to start using buyers personas because nothing we're doing is working because of the iOS 14 update. And it took forever because there was so much friction, not because of the client, but because it takes time. It takes time to do the research to create a buyer's persona. And so people want to skip that step because it's time consuming. But the second that we did, when we finally took a step back and tried to figure out, okay, who are actual segments? One of them was, it was moms who wanted, because this particular water bottle makes alkaline water. And so one of their segments were moms who are looking for healthier solutions to aging and also for their healthier solutions for their family. The second customer segment was millennials who are looking for their next big secret that they can tell their friends. And so once we identified those two main segments, we implemented a campaign dedicated specifically to those two different people, and our conversion increased by 400%, Brian. That's insane. 400%, a difference from what we were doing before when we were kind of guessing, like you said, guessing at what we thought people cared about and maybe hitting some of the different target markets. Instead, now I'm being super specific and I want this girl. And then I'm being super specific in this ad and I want only her. So then I dedicated each campaign to those segments and the results speak for itself.
Yeah. Yeah, this is far from being only in the theory. This is actually super helpful. I've seen it myself. It's super helpful for getting the actual results that you're mentioning. So it's worth it at the time. It's worth it, everything, because it's actually, how are you going to get results otherwise? You know, we have had on many people on the podcast, and some of the recent guests were e-commerce directors of some well-known brands, and also not well-known as well, right? And many of them leverage collaborations, leverage ambassadors, leverage many things. So what collaboration are you going to focus on if you don't know what your audience wants? What kind of product or creation are you going to work on if you don't know what they want? So it's way easier.
Exactly.
You stop, instead of skipping steps, you stop, you do the work that you need to do, then you regroup, you analyze, and then you actually, following the ROI method, you actually go and do the things that your customers are expecting from you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually try to replicate their own phrases and words so it resonates more with them.
Yes. Yes. So when you collect the voice of customer data, what I love about it is that I don't know how many times as a copywriter, I've like stared at a blank Google Doc for like hours trying to figure out what I'm going to write. That becomes a problem of the past when you actually have this voice of customer data. You take the time to organize it into recurring themes, features and benefits, and then objections and doubts. Now I know exactly what they care about and why, and in the words of my actual customers. And so now I can just look to the voice of customer research. What are the most common things they're saying? And I can use that directly in my copy and say it exactly how the customer says it. So now they don't just identify with it, but it sounds like it's coming from them.
All right. One last question I have is, just in case someone in the audience is dealing with this, if you have an e-commerce brand with diverse categories, do you need to do this as many times as categories you want to, develop? Or do you need to do it once, covering all the themes, let's say, in one focus word, or the three of them, right?
I think you can, let's say you're a smaller brand and you can't afford it. I think you can get away with doing it once. But here's the thing is, if you want to defeat ad exhaustion, because that's their biggest issue, is like eventually you're going to hit a point of exhaustion and that the audience will no longer react to that messaging. And so anytime you hit ad exhaustion, what you want to do is prepare for that And you can prepare for that by just redoing the ROI method with a different set of customers. And I guarantee, yeah, you're going to find a lot of the same recurring themes, but what you'll also find is a new way of saying the same message and a new way of conveying it so that you can actually defeat ad exhaustion. You can think about it beforehand. So what I would recommend is to do it at least once a quarter minimum. If you have the funds, you are making a mistake if you're not spending the time to actually research and get to know your customers. Otherwise, you're literally throwing money away.
Yeah, totally agree. This has been great. I mean, a lot of actionable tips and advice for listeners and well, the brands, the commerce stores, and it's really nice to have people like you here because we have typically the e-commerce director or the founder or some book authors around mindset, business coach. But this is actually some of the interviews that I like most. I enjoy every interview, but this is like so actionable from a professional with a lot of experience in the industry. And these guys can help you a lot because what Tawny is telling you here is like, she's giving you the full thing so you can go and actually do it or hire her to do it because it's actually something I mean, you don't want to skip because I've seen the difference myself and it's not something you want to do. So Tawny, before we leave, is there any or are there any books that you loved or helped you in your career or life?
Yeah, I would say I like to say my copywriting Bible is the Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joseph Sugarman. And he's like I think one of the greatest copywriters of all time. And all of the things I learned in that book, I still use today. And he outlines so many old school tactics that are evergreen. And there's so much. I reread this book over and over again, and I always find new nuggets that I can implement into my copy.
That's awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And is there or are there any mentors that you have had in the past?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to Kyle Creek, also known as the Captain. He was my very first creative director, and he's the guy who took a chance on me. And he's the guy who told me I'm not a social media manager, I'm a copywriter. And if it weren't for him, I would not have had this amazing career or anything that is in my life that I've been able to manifest since he took that one chance on me. So thanks, Kyle.
That's awesome. Hey, before we wrap up, is there anything I didn't ask you that you think might benefit the audience?
Let me think.
Ask you a lot of things, so probably not, but maybe since you need to get the voice of customer, I'm asking you, I don't want to assume.
Well, you know what? If there's one thing that I want anybody to take from this is that there is no substitute for human interaction. Like we're always looking for, I think that we have become so, as a society, as an industry, we've become so hyper-focused on finding a shortcut to everything. What I want you guys to know is that this is the only shortcut you will ever need because it gives you all of the answers. Once you're done with all of this voice of customer research, you can pass it to the customer service team. You can pass it to the merchandising team. Everybody can benefit from this information, and it will be a gold mine if you take the time to do it. From here on out, once you do this one thing, yes, it's time consuming, but if you actually do it right, everything thereafter will be so much faster and easier, and you don't have to guess anymore. Who is tired of guessing? I know that we all are.
Guessing, you heard her. No, I share everything you said. Thank you. And before we go, where can people go to find more about you?
You can find me at kickasscontentcreator.com or add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk about the ROI method with anybody who's willing, and also just to connect with other people in this space because I love advertising and marketing.
I love that. Yeah, we'll make sure to include that in the show notes. And of course, don't forget to go and check out Tawny's conversation or presentation, let's say, in the Ads Work conference. Thank you, Tawny, for being on the show. You've been great.
All right, for sure. Have a good day.
You too.